Anyway, let's go ahead and get started and look at our first woman, Diana, who is 33 years old, who lives in San Diego, California. She's freshly hit the wall, and she is currently single. Why are you single? They asked Diana. Her response, I am currently single by choice. I broke up with my long-term boyfriend about 6 years ago after my father passed away. We had a decent relationship, and he was a really nice guy, but I wasn't in love. I didn't want to settle, and I felt selfish for keeping him when I didn't have those feelings for him. I knew he would make a great boyfriend for someone else, just not me. 6 years later, I feel like an entirely different person. After my father passed away, she says, what's that got to do with breaking up with your boyfriend? You see, guys, Diana is using this as a smokescreen to get sympathy so that people can give her permission to make bad decisions, such as breaking up with her boyfriend of 6 years. Okay, guys, girls do this all the time. My dog died, so I broke up with my boyfriend. I found out my mother had cancer, so I divorced my husband. She also says she had a decent relationship with a really nice guy, but I wasn't in love. Decent relationship is code for relationship without drama and emotional roller coasters, which women absolutely need to stay interested in said man. He was nice, guys. He was a nice guy, but he was boring. That's why she wasn't in love. Women only love men who take them on emotional roller coasters. Then she says, I felt selfish for keeping him. This is self-deprecation to make us think that she's holding herself accountable for doing something selfish. Guys, she held on to him because she knew he wasn't going anywhere. She only broke up with him when she had someone else firmly in her grip. This is what we call monkey branching in the manosphere. A woman will never, ever break up with you unless there's another guy. If a girl sits you down and says, Donovan, I think we should start seeing other people. Donovan, it's time to break up. Donovan, let's take a break. Dude, she's been sleeping with another guy for at least 3 months. Girls break up with you in their minds 3 to 6 months before they ever break up with you with their mouths. You see, women want to be free, but they don't want to be alone. This is why they monkey branch. Then she says, I know he'd make a great boyfriend for someone else. That's BS, guys. Because if he'd make such a great boyfriend, then why didn't you keep him around? Again, that's BS. Girls like to talk like that to make themselves feel better about dumping a good guy. So then they asked Diana, how do you feel about being single? Oh, hang on. Let me jump back up here. She says, I do love it. I've learned to ignore the single shamers and have embraced my independence. I learned how strong I could be when I moved across the country with my dog for a new job and had to rely solely on myself. Oh, good for you. You were an adult. Give you credit for that. Being single has taught me to love my quirks because my quirks are my strengths. I'm single and happier than I've ever been. So they asked her how she feels about being single. I do love it. She says, yeah, for now. Listen, I'll sit here and admit the single life is more fun for girls. You don't have to be accountable for to anybody for anything. You can do whatever you want when you want. You don't have anybody holding you accountable. You're not committed to one guy. But it has long-term effects. Being single is like eating junk food. It tastes great now, but it leaves you empty later on. Right? Like when you eat junk food, you're always hungry for more junk food. You sleep with a bunch of douchebags, you're hungry for more douchebags. None of that stuff is fulfilling. You eat enough junk food for long enough, you get fat and unhealthy. You sleep with enough douchebags, you become mentally and physically unhealthy. Then she says, I'm single and happier than I've ever been. Well, of course she's happy. She's single, right? She lives in one of the best cities in the world where the weather is always nice, right? Ask her again in 5 years when she's 38. I can assure you that if she's being honest with you, her answer will be very, very different. Then they asked her, have you always felt this way? Her answer, I did. I was just afraid to admit it. It has never been socially acceptable to be a single woman in your 30s. That's why I love this time for women. I love that we're embracing our careers and waiting longer to get married and have children. I love that we're really fighting the stigma that has surrounded single women for so long. This is the problem, guys. These women out here, they're being sold a bad bill of goods. There's a reason being single in your 30s is a bad thing, ladies. The older you get, the less attractive you are. The less attractive you are, the less selective you get to be, which means the guy you end up with is not going to be a guy you're really going to respect and love. This is why women who have children in their mid to late 30s have children with a bunch of health problems. This is why you're supposed to have children young. Then they ask her, what would you tell your younger self? Diana's answer, you are strong and you are enough. You don't need to be thinner, prettier, or more successful to be worthy of someone else's love. You have to embrace what you really want in life and learn to love yourself first. You have what it takes to make it on your own. Be honest with yourself and don't settle for mediocrity because life is too short. You deserve happiness. Oh my God. Listen, on one hand, you don't have to be thinner and more attractive to be worthy of someone else's love in terms of a man of low value, right? Like she says, well, you don't have to be thin and beautiful. Yeah, that's true. But what she's not telling you is that those someone else's are low quality. You do have to be thinner and more attractive to be worthy of a love from a man of value. That's how this works. Ladies, I'm here to tell you, being successful has nothing to do with that. Listen, men of value don't care how successful you are or aren't in your careers. Women use this as an excuse to keep sleeping around. Well, I'm not far enough in my career to attract a high value guy, so I'm not going to get serious with anybody just yet. Well, guess what? I have news for you. By the time you're successful, you're 38. And no man of value is going to marry a woman in her late 30s who had the femininity stripped from her as a result of climbing the corporate ladder. And again, yes, you do have what it takes to make it on your own. Everybody does. But it's a lonely existence. It's always nice to have someone to share life with. And I admit that myself. Then she says, mediocrity, don't settle for mediocrity because life is too short. You deserve happiness. Did a 33-year-old just say YOLO? Seriously, did a woman in her 30s basically just say YOLO? That's where we are with women right now. Let's move to our next woman, Lori, who lives in Wichita, Kansas, who is 45. Oh, this one is going to be very interesting. So they ask Lori, how do you feel about being single? She says, quote, I get lonely sometimes and occasionally miss having someone in my life. But overall, I enjoy doing my own thing, sleeping alone and being by myself. I've been single more than I've been coupled up. I've not dated exclusively for about 5 years. Since turning 40 and having a couple of bad experiences with online dating, I've come to accept the fact that I may never get married, and I'm okay with that. I'm willing to let it happen organically if it does. Until then, I'm dating myself. I think it bothers others that I'm single more than it bothers me. I get lonely sometimes, she says. Boom, there's the honesty. She's 45 and alone. She's lying about the fact that she occasionally misses having someone in her life. No, she misses it all the time. She misses it every day. Guys, she's lonely all the time. Don't get it twisted. Then she says, but overall, I enjoy doing my own thing, sleeping alone and being by myself. No, you don't. Are you serious with this? She wants us to believe that she's actually happy sleeping by herself. A woman. Then she says, I've not dated exclusively for about 5 years. There we go again, guys. There's another woman who's letting us know, well, I haven't had a boyfriend for 5 years. You know what that means? This means she's been sleeping around doing one-night stands, and then she gives herself away by talking about the fact that she's doing online dating, which means her notch count is being raised exponentially every day of every month of every year. And by the way, when she says bad experiences, translation, they used me for sex and didn't call me back. This is what happens to you when you're in your 40s, sweetheart. Okay? You women are thought of as nothing more as a distraction to pass the time, while men of value look for younger, tighter versions of you. Then she says, I may never get married. No, sweetie, you will never get married. Dudes who are worth anything, they ain't marrying a 45-year-old who's been pumped and dumped by Tinder douchebags over the last half decade. And no, you're not okay with that. You have to tell us that. You have to tell yourself that to sleep at night, but you are not okay with being single and sleeping alone at 45. That's why you take Ambien and a handful of benzos to knock yourself out before you cry yourself to sleep. Then she says, I'm willing to let it happen organically if it does. You got no choice, sweetheart. And spoiler alert, it's not gonna happen organically or otherwise. Then she says it bothers others that I'm single more than it bothers me. Who is she trying to convince here? Guys, it bothers the hell out of her that she's single. Dude, people don't give a damn about your love life. This is how solipsistic women are. They think that everyone's paying attention to what people are just so concerned about my life. I think it bothers them. No, they don't give a damn about you. Not even your best friends are too busy living their own lives. People are inherently selfish, especially women. I've used this example all the time. Even if you had two women who were best friends, one of them is in an abusive relationship. She gets on the phone. She talks, well, Steve came home and he put his hands on me again. And during that 15 to 20 minute conversation, her best friend is really concerned. But as soon as she hangs up the phone, she doesn't give a damn about her friend. That's how this is. Then they asked her, 45-year-old Lori, how have your viewpoints changed over the years? She says, quote, I've gotten more comfortable with myself and less concerned with what others think. A lot of people are miserable in their marriages, but too comfortable to make a change and or are scared to be alone. I'm much less hung up on the idea that Prince Charming is going to show up, but I do hope there is someone out there for me. Oh, here we go. I stayed in an abusive relationship for 5 years in my 20s, so I know about being comfortable, but miserable and scared to be alone. Oh, give me a break. Oh, dude, for seriously? Okay, comfortable, yes, that is a necessity. Let's just start from the top there. You are who you are. You have to be comfortable with yourself. Like when you're in jail, it sucks at first, but at some point, you get comfortable with it because you know you're not going anywhere. Then she says, well, I'm much less hung up on Prince Charming. This is because you know Prince Charming ain't gonna show up. He ain't walking through that door. And oh, by the way, you had dozens of Prince Charmings, but because you were young and dumb, you passed them up thinking that they'd still be there in your 30s and 40s. And now that they're not, you're less hung up on the idea that he'll find you. And this abusive relationship, for crying out loud, every woman has been in an abusive relationship. And when they say abusive relationship, they want us to think, they imply that it was a physically abusive relationship, as in he put his hands on her, he beat her. But like the term date and assault, the definition has been expanded so much that it's nebulous and can mean anything they want it to mean. Abusive relationship could mean he was verbally abusive, which in womanese means he didn't worship the ground you walked on, called you out on your BS, held you accountable for your actions, and didn't tolerate your emotional shenanigans. Get out of here with that. She's also using this abusive relationship as an excuse not to be married in her 20s. I would have gotten married in my 20s, but the guy I thought was Mr. Right turned out to be Mr. Wrong because he was abusive. So I said, why bother? I'll just be single to protect my heart. All that is a load of BS. I don't believe for 1 second this chick was ever in an abusive relationship. So then they ask her, this is an interesting question, what would you tell your younger self? She says, quote, I would tell my younger self that the opinions of others are not important. The most important relationship in my life is with myself. Finally, I'd remind myself to trust my gut feeling. Yes, the most important relationship is yourself now that you're 45. Trust my gut feeling means sleep with the hottest guy. Follow your heart. Translation, get with the hottest guy. Trust your instincts. Translation, get with the hottest guy.